Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman, here as always with Tom Orr. Tom, how's it going?
Tony, you'll have to wait till the availability report comes out on Saturday morning at 9 a.m. for me to tell you how I'm doing. Sorry.
God,
You know, it's a policy. Sorry.
and I know you don't want to talk about it, but can you just tell me, will you be available for the game?
We'll let you know at 9 a.m. on Saturday. If you show up and I'm there, I mean, that's probably a good sign. But
Okay. Do you know who your backup is?
I do. And, if I'm not available on Saturday, there will be our next man up culture. We'll have Kevin Noon stepping right on the other side of the camera, right out front. Boom. I believe in Kevin. I know he practices just as hard as I do. We push each other every day. Iron sharpens iron. I think that's it. I think we touched them all.
But
good job, everyone.
Are you at least practicing?
I am in a limited contact jersey for this podcast. Yes.
That's too bad. I'd really like to see you just really get hit, like really, really take a couple of hits, just to shake the rust off, if you will. So, Tom, it is Oregon week. We are near the end of it. Oregon is one day away at this point. Still about a 13 and a half, 14-point line. I've been waiting for Vegas to get all of the injury information, and stuff seems to be really locked down in terms of Kayvon Thibodeaux, who is still day to day. Oregon is probably in Columbus as you listen to this now. I assume Kayvon Thibodeaux traveled.
Yes, I'm sure Kayvon Thibodeaux traveled, and they did get here Thursday night. So that was unless their flight got diverted or something, they got here Thursday night. That was the plan.
And then I'm sure, on the plane, he's still getting treatment, like electric treatment on his ankle or whatever, trying to do whatever they can to get him ready. And Ryan Day said on Thursday that they're all preparing for Thibodeaux to play. And I think if you don't prepare for him to play, you're making a huge mistake. What is it? Shoot for the stars. And if you fall short, you've landed on the moon. And on the moon, there is no Kayvon Thibodeaux.
Not as far as you know. I mean, we haven't gone back to the moon in a long time, so I don't know. There's probably no Kayvon Thibodeaux, but we won't know for sure until we go back.
I don't know if that is solid reasoning to actually go to the moon, but government being what it is, there's also some Justin Flo rumors out there, and Mario Cristobal is not talking about that. Justin Flo being the freshman linebacker who had 14 tackles last week for Oregon, stepping in for the starting linebacker, I believe Drew Mathis, who was injured. And so there's rumors, but again, expect everybody to play. This is one of those games where if you can play, you will play, and you just you suck it up and know that if you can just get through this game, like Ryan Day has always talked about, in terms of backup quarterbacks and this and that and everything. It's like, well, let's just get through the Oregon week. Then we can, lift our heads up and see what's going on and then evaluate some things. And you have to get through this game first. And so let's preview this sucker, Tom. Who's going to win? No, just get right to it. Quick show, no need for the dilly dallying, but no, let's dilly dally. And then let's go like unit by unit kind of thing. I want to talk about the Oregon run offense against the Ohio State run defense. Last week, the Ohio State run defense didn't look great, gave up the 60-some yarder to Mohamed Ibrahim on a 4th and 1. I would say not necessarily a broken play, just a missed tackle that produced roughly a third of the yards there. And if they can eliminate that, then they'll go a long way. Watching this Oregon running game, things got going in the fourth quarter. It took a while, though. Still didn't average. They averaged 3.8 yards per carry against Fresno State. Fresno State being, okay, but you should average more than 3.8 yards per carry. And it should take you no more than one quarter to establish the line of scrimmage. And so the fact that they did not do well against Fresno State, we talk about don't do the transitive property. I think this is one of those areas where it's like, well, if you can't run against Fresno very well, you should not be able to run against Ohio State very well.
That's true. I think this is also one of those don't overreact to week one things where, I mean, if you're going based off of that and you're getting 3.8 yards per carry against Fresno State and none of your three main rushers reaching 5 yards per carry, then that means you're doomed all season. Like you are not going to be able to run the ball against anyone in the Pac-12. I mean, maybe Arizona. I mean, how many teams in the Pac-12 are worse than Fresno State? Fresno State's not a bad team, but they would be at best like a mid-tier Pac-12 team. So that means like 6 games, you're at 3 yards per carry and you're losing all those games. That's realistically not going to happen. Like Oregon's a better team than that. It's a little bit of a concern, but it's also a week one thing. I mean, you can go broke looking at week one and just projecting forward and saying, well, this is definitely what's going to happen. If they did this against them, then, oh man, they're going to be terrible all year. And it's like, well, guess what? The old axiom about teams improving most between game one and game two, like, yes, that guess where we are on the schedule right now between game one and game two. So I'm not necessarily expecting Oregon to come out and just be completely stonewalled by the Ohio State defense and run for two yards and some change per carry. I don't think you're going to be looking at that. But at the same time, they have to be a little concerned. Oregon has to be a little bit concerned because the test is getting a little harder this week. And you're on the road and you get a hostile crowd. All that stuff adds up to like, it is not strictly speaking what you would want if you were an Oregon coach right now.
No, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what the Ohio State defense looks like. We know they played a bunch of players in the first game against Minnesota. They have talked about shortening the bench a little, shortening that rotation, but also they are going to be facing quite a few snaps. Like Oregon's going to run plays. They're going to run tempo. So I think you're still going to see a bunch of players, but that's just because they want to keep players fresh rather than necessarily like last week. They wanted to see, I think, what guys could do. And they felt better about this guy in this position or that guy in this position. I think here it's more of, okay, we got to keep guys fresh. So they're going to rotate some linebackers but you still have to, as Ryan Day said several times on Thursday, you need to keep players fresh. They're going to rotate guys, but you have to balance that with finding chemistry and finding a rhythm. And so there's a fine line between once you've got that rhythm and then also keeping players fresh. But I feel like they would, I think the preference would be the chemistry and the rhythm. And then if you play a little tired, I think that's okay because eventually, you should be trying to get off the field, obviously. So if you can find the right guys to get those guys off the field, now you've got something.
Yeah, nothing solves tempo quite like 3 and outs. Like that's the best way to get another offense off the field. And, I'm sure that they want to make sure they've got rotation in there. And I think they're probably pretty confident they're a little more confident in their depth than they were a week ago before the Minnesota game. But at the same time, you have to play your best guys because there is a drop off. Ohio State has more depth than most programs, but you have to trust your best guys. There's a reason they are your starters, and it sounds like that's what they're going to do. They're going to shorten that rotation. If you have to play more guys later to keep guys fresh, so be it. But I am expecting a much shorter bench, I think, for the bulk of that game on Saturday.
And to me, that means Cody Simon and Taraji Mitchell at linebacker, more of the 4-2-5 with a bullet rather than a Sam. So we'll see is Ronnie Hickman that full-time guy because he had way more snaps than Craig Young last week. So is he the Pete Werner to Craig Young's Brendan White, even though Ronnie Hickman is very, very different than Pete Werner, but just like Pete Werner, if he can do everything, then maybe you just keep him in there so that you can disguise stuff, so you can do all sorts of different stuff without bringing anybody else in. Because we did see some of the struggles of mass substitutions and then getting everybody set and getting everybody where they needed to be. So if you can just keep Ronnie Hickman in there for everything, knowing that you're still going to substitute, but for the most part, keep him in there for whatever you're doing. Now that makes you a more consistent defense, just a more ready, able defense. And I'm looking forward to seeing how they stop the run, because this is going to be our first look at, as we keep saying, our first real look at what this Ohio State defense is designed to do. And you go back to Jim Tressel in the 2009 season, the Rose Bowl after the year, the 2010 Rose Bowl, talking about Oregon's up-tempo offense, and he said we're an up-tempo defense. And now we're going to see this Ohio State up-tempo defense. So I'm looking forward to it. Any aspect of that you're looking forward to seeing, or what you're looking forward to finding out?
I think this is the week you really find out. They don't release a depth chart, and they don't want to tell you. You ask who's playing where, and it's always, well, everyone's practicing everywhere. This is the week that you actually get the answers. They don't answer the questions beforehand for obvious reasons, but this is the week you find out what they really think. And that I think is what I'm most looking forward to is Ronnie Hickman the every down guy again? Because I think we came into the season expecting Craig Young to be out there a lot, and then he wasn't against Minnesota. And if he's not against Oregon, those are kind of the two polar opposite ends of the spectrum. So if he's not out there against either of those, well, then that tells me he's probably not going to be out there a whole heck of a lot this season. And there are positional battles all over like that. And there are still some questions, and Josh Proctor's status is a little up in the air right now. And that's going to be a real interesting spot to watch, because that's something, if you're the deep safety, that's a real important spot on this defense. Not letting those 20-yard plays turn into 60-yard plays. And if that's Bryson Shaw instead of Josh Proctor, I think we're going to find out a lot about Bryson Shaw, because he's kind of, I think he was a little bit of a forgotten man for a lot of Ohio State fans coming into the season, where, he was ranked 580th or something as a recruit. And, it was one of those guys that I think people just sort of like, he was in the class and everyone just kind of forgot about him. And he was pretty quiet for the first 2 years. If Josh Proctor can't play on Saturday, all of a sudden Bryson Shaw is one of the most important players on that team. So that's going to be really interesting to watch. We'll see whether Proctor can go or not. I think I walked away from, we saw him walking off the field after practice on Wednesday night, and he looked much more ready to play than than I was expecting. He had a yellow jersey, tucked into his pants. So he had been in at least limited contact, but he looked like he had been out there. It was not arm in a sling or anything like that. So that's, that's a notable thing to me, that it's at least decently possible that he'll play. So, but that's one of many, many things on this defense that I'm interested to see. Jack Sawyer, JT Tuimoloau, how much are those guys playing? Is Zach Harrison getting 60 something snaps again this week? I don't think you can, but this is when you're going to find out. They can say whatever they want. This is the week you find out what they actually think.
Yeah, Josh Proctor with that bright yellow jersey tucked up under his own jersey. Maybe he was part of the Oregon scout team, Tom. Think about that. The pass defense as a whole for the Buckeyes, I don't know. The skill at Oregon, they have some really good receivers. They have talented running backs. Anthony Brown, the quarterback, I don't know how much he tests the secondary with his arm. He was 15 of 24 last week for 172 yards, 1 touchdown. He did have a touchdown rushing as well. So he can escape, he can run, he can be part of that running game. And I wonder how much we see of that zone read. But he was also sacked 3 times in 27 pass attempts. So that's not a great rate for the Oregon offensive line. And so that tells me that the Buckeyes are going to have a shot here to get to him. Now it's a matter of containing him. And do you come after him? You can't just go crazy after him. You've got to maybe contain him, not let him get outside, because then he can make plays with his feet and with his arm. And this is a secondary that is still trying to find itself. We'll see if Seven Banks is a go. I think Denzel Burke having that game under his belt was very impressive. And now these are all guys that are a little bit more experienced, but they're still not veterans. Ryan Day always talks about, we need our guys to play veteran, using veteran as an adjective. And it's like, or I guess an adverb there, but they can't do that just so soon, even though I think they all had their moments, and they'll need to continue to have their moments. I think Anthony Brown is going to provide some opportunities for Ohio State to make some plays in the secondary, and we'll see that they just have to capitalize. And we see that a lot with quarterbacks in the Big Ten. You have to take advantage of their bad throws. I think Anthony Brown's going to give them some opportunities. They just have to take advantage of them.
Right. You have to catch them when they're thrown, and you have to not have a hit the quarterback in the head when the guy does catch it. I mean, these are both important steps in the process, but you're right. I mean, this is a team that has skill talent, like on the outside, the wide receivers are good enough that it's like, this will be a very stiff test for this Ohio State defense. Even if Sevyn Banks and Josh Proctor and Cam Brown are all back, this is one of the best wide receiver units they're going to face all year. But Anthony Brown is like, well, he's okay, but he's not great. I saw someone compare him to JT Barrett earlier. And I don't know if he's even JT Barrett good passing the ball. I mean, JT Barrett had his moments, the Penn State game in 2017, for example, that I don't think Anthony Brown has reached yet. So, it may not have the JT Barrett ceiling, but it may have some of the frustrations you may have had with JT Barrett over the years, you may see played out for Anthony Brown on Saturday. That limits the ceiling, I think, a little bit for this Oregon offense. They're going to score. This is not going to be Ohio State holds them to 6 points. Like they are going to score. You need to keep your remote in your hand. Do not throw it against the wall. It will be fine. Like they're good. Everyone. It's college football in 2021. Everybody scores points. Like that's just how it is. They're going to be giving up. They're going to give up some touchdowns. This is an Oregon team that is one of the best teams that they're going to face all year. I think at the end of this game, they will have played two of the top 5 most dangerous games that we had on the schedule when we went through the whole schedule. If they're 2-0 and they've got 2 of the 5 most dangerous games behind them, and then and then it's mid-September and you have a little bit of time to get better, that's great. Like this is one, if Ohio State wins this game by 1 point, you should go, great. That's great. This is fantastic. And move on, and don't be the guy who is the demand excellence guy who is always the guy who has 7 followers and an egg avatar on Twitter. And it's like, no, that is unacceptable. Like, it's going to be fine. They just need to get through this game with, whatever healthy guys they have, whatever young guys they're playing, get through this game and then move on. But I don't expect them to get, I don't expect this to be 52-49 or anything like that. Oregon's going to score, but they're not going to score that much.
Yeah. I've been seeing a lot on Twitter since and during that Minnesota game that certain Buckeye fans would have never made it, never survived. Twitter would have never survived the 2002 season because there was the only thing to like about that season was the end of the game. Even now going back and watching the Holy Buckeye game, that's a very, very boring game until the last few minutes when there's all kinds of crazy excitement. But look, at first time I have to take some issue. You said everybody scores. I watched Georgia and Clemson. But that's
goals are scores. Field goals are scores.
Fair, and defense can also score, as we saw. The Ohio State run offense against the Oregon rush defense against Fresno State. They allowed 77 yards on 30 carries, 2.6 yards per carry. However, Fresno only rushed for 4.1 yards against UConn the week before. So let's not go overboard on Fresno State's ability to run the ball, because if you can only average 4 yards a carry against UConn, you can't run the ball. So that's something to keep in mind, that this is going to be a much different running game for Oregon that they'll see, because they have not seen anything like this. I don't know when the last time they saw something like this was. Maybe in some sort of postseason game, or maybe even in the playoffs, the last time they saw Ohio State.
Yeah, I mean, this is for sure a major step up in competition for Oregon. And Fresno State's a better team than, if you just look at the helmets, you think, oh, it's a mid-level Mountain West team. Like they're a pretty good team. They might be a fringy top 25 team at some point this year. They're not that dissimilar necessarily from Minnesota in a lot of ways, but I mean, it's a very different team from Minnesota, but just in terms of overall skill and where they'll probably end up in the, postseason rankings in some of those advanced stats, you may see them kind of in the same neighborhood as Minnesota, just to give you kind of a little bit of a measuring stick for what they are. But yeah, I mean, limiting them to 2.6 yards per carry, I think you conservatively have to double that for Ohio State. I mean, just it's and if they hold Ohio State to 5 yards per carry, that's not terrible. I mean, what was Mayan Williams yards per carry last week? 14 or something like that. I mean, you can't do that. Don't do that. That's but a lot of that's just going to come down to limiting the big plays. Can they keep Mayan Williams in front of them? Can they keep Mayan Williams from having a 70-yard touchdown this week? Because I think you're going to have I mean, we talked about the shorter bench on defense. They have all but said there's going to be a shorter bench on offense in terms of the running back rotation. And I don't know if, I don't think Marcus Crowley probably gets a whole lot of carries this week. I don't know. I think there's a real possibility that the top two guys in terms of carries are Mayan Williams and Travion Henderson. I think that's what I'm expecting. And, those guys are both people who have big play ability. Those are guys who can, hit, you go 5, you go 6, you go 7, whatever. And then you get one that goes 60. That's the stuff that Oregon, that's what Oregon has to not allow to happen. Because if Ohio State's going down the field real quickly, that's going to be a big problem. That's what killed Minnesota last week. They have to make Ohio State be consistent. Put the pressure on CJ Stroud, put the pressure on the young Ohio State quarterback to make consistent throws, move the chains, make 6 plays to get down the field, not just one quick swing pass to Travion Henderson and he's gone, or, hand it off to Mayan Williams and he's gone. That's going to be a real key for Oregon. Because if it turns into a track meet like the second half against Minnesota did, I don't think Oregon can keep up.
Yeah, and as you mentioned with the defense wanting to see the true rotation, I think we're going to see some the revelations here of these are the guys we have to roll with, and that being Mayan Williams and Travion Henderson. I'll be interested to see if now they just can fully commit to that, and Master Teague, Marcus Crowley are fourth quarter guys mainly, and that's a tough pill to swallow for certain guys. There'll be more opportunities for everybody, but we know that in crunch time, as we always say, Urban Meyer always says that's life in a big city, and so you have to kind of swallow your pride and root on the guys who are on the field. And I think that's what you'll start to see at running back. And I think it's time. You need your best guys out there, the guys that give you the best opportunities for big plays, for to cause a nervous defense. Because while I think the defense will respect anybody back there carrying the ball, there's respect, and there's maybe a little fear or apprehension. They would never admit to having fear for any ball carrier, but there are guys where you have to be like extra ready for. And I think Mayan Williams and Travion Henderson are those two guys over the others. And that's not taking away from any of those guys. That's just how much more elevated Williams and Henderson are. And I think we'll see that in this game. And I'm looking forward to it. I wrote this week that like if they get 30 carries between those two guys, to me, that's 200 yards. That's a win. Where are you?
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah, absolutely. I mean, because if those guys have 30 carries between them, that means A, Ohio State is hanging onto the football. B, Ohio State is running the ball effectively, which is setting up the play action passing game. And, so you're holding onto the football, you're moving the football, and you're setting up your passing game. You're also staying on schedule. You're not getting yourself into second. And if you're averaging, would you say 30 carries and 200 yards? I mean, you're averaging 7 yards a carry, give or take.
6.9.
Nice. You're doing it consistently. That means you're staying on schedule. That means you've got a lot of 2nd and 4s instead of 2nd and 9s. That then sets up the play action game even more. That is like the recipe for success for Ohio State. If they can do that, if those guys have 30 carries, 35 carries between them, like that tells me, barring something really crazy, that Ohio State wins that game almost certainly.
Yeah, and if they have 30 carries, there's going to be a 30 or 40 yarder in there, if not 2, if not 3. You mentioned the passing game. If that running game is going, the passing game, maybe even without the running game, the passing game could have a good day. Oregon gave up like 298 yards passing to Fresno State. They allowed 70% completions.
Almost.
69.8%. Fresno State averaging 6.9 yards per pass attempt, which was pretty nice. It's not a lot, but it's nice. The the there's mostly short passes that they ran, but you complete them, you pick up, you move the chains, you stay on schedule. I think we'll continue to see some of that from Ohio State, like we did last week. Watching that game, their Oregon defenders play off. I can't imagine they're going to play up too much against Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson. So they're going to give them opportunity to, I guess it's bend but don't break. But the problem is that Ohio State can like bend you into like spirals, and just keep bending you. And no, you don't necessarily break, but you just roll away at that point because you're just one big spiral.
Yards after catch has been a big topic this week. I mean, that was something that Chris Olave talked about, that was something he really worked on, getting better with the ball in his hands and doing more with the ball in his hands after the catch. It was something Ryan Day talked about on Thursday about how important that was and how big that was against Minnesota, that it wasn't just you threw the ball a long distance and it dropped into Chris Olave's hands at the goal lines and he stepped into the end zone. You throw shorter passes and then the receivers can do something with it after and turn those relatively short passes into longer gains. That's going to be big if Oregon's playing off. That's the whole point of playing off, is you're giving yourself space to not get beat over the top. So then if the guy catches the ball and catches a short pass, you need to turn that into a 5-yard gain and not let him get past that first guy and turn that into a 25 or 30 or 50-yard gain. That's going to be like really, really important. And Ohio State's receivers, I think, are good enough to make that first guy miss and make some of those big plays. You saw it last week against Minnesota. I think you're going to see it some this week against Oregon. One thing that I noticed looking at the stats from last week, a lot of CJ Stroud's passes were, 10 yards or less in the air, very close to the line of scrimmage, and then like let the guy go make a play. And, you look at his stat and it's like, he was, 4 of 6 in the flat on the left side of the field, like 4 of 6, but it was for like 150 yards. It's like, well, how could that be? Well, yeah, if Travion Henderson catches a ball that's in the air for 5 yards and then turns it into a 70-yard touchdown, like, boy, that number goes up pretty quick, doesn't it? That's going to be that. I mean, that's something that they have stressed for years. I mean, this goes back to like the Urban Meyer era. I remember with Cardale Jones in the 2014 Big Ten championship game, it was like, well, keep him out of the middle of the field, deep or short, but like mostly living outside those hash marks. Just get the ball outside, out into space, and try and let one of those guys do something with it. Keep it simple for the quarterback, put your young quarterback in position to succeed, and lean on those veteran explosive receivers to make the plays. That's going to be the question. If you see a bunch of swing passes to Chris Olave and he keeps getting tackled for 6-yard gains, 6 yards is great, but that's ultimately probably a little bit concerning for Ohio State. If you see those easy, quick passes out in the flat turn into big gains, that's when you can smile, and you're going to see a lot of Oregon faces on their sideline looking pretty concerned if you see that happen with some consistency.
Yeah, and if they're just dropping back into the zone over the middle of the field, you're probably not going to see much stuff there either, unless it's something quick to Ruckert or Jackson Smith and Jigba. They're just playing man against these guys. Like, you have to have really, really good defenders, and Oregon's recruiting has been good, and they do return a couple of one starter from last year, their nickel back, even though he probably won't start. They'll continue to go with Bennett Williams, who earned a job in camp, and he's their nickel guy. They call him a star, which Ohio State fans should recognize. That's what their nickel back guy used to be called back in the day under Jim Tressel. So they do have more depth now than they did. But when it comes down to choosing any secondary over Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave, maybe I'm a homer, but I'm going to take the two best receivers, the best receiver combo in the nation, and I'll feel pretty good about it. And as long as, whether Kayvon Thibodeaux is playing or not, give the Ohio State quarterback time, and give any quarterback time, and that quarterback can succeed with those two receivers. Now, Thibodeaux, even if he's 80%, I don't think that's great for Oregon, because but I don't think he can be 100% either. So it's terrible for them, because they could sure use him in this game, and he's probably, I don't know, he might be a 7 or 14 point difference just based on the fact that he may cause a turnover that leads to points, and he may also keep you from scoring on a drive. Like he may be a 14-point swing all by himself if he's healthy. And I don't expect him to be healthy. At this point, I don't even know. I kind of feel like he's not going to play or not be very effective playing.
Well, I think not being very effective playing is probably the most likely outcome to me. I will believe that he sits the game out when I see it, and not a moment before that. There's been all sorts of conflicting reports out of Oregon that, it wasn't nearly as bad as you thought. And then there were reports that, it's way worse than you thought. And he's not going to practice, and Mario Cristobal coming out and saying, if he doesn't practice, he's not going to play. So there's a bunch of stuff out there right now. And this is, I always feel like the week before a big game is a little bit like the week before the NFL draft, where it's just like all these teams are floating stuff. And it's like, well, what does the team get out of telling you what they're going to do? Like nothing, unless they're setting you up for, the team in front, the team picking behind us wants this guy. And if we tell them who we're actually going to pick, they're going to trade up ahead of us. It's the same thing for, it doesn't do Oregon any good to tell everyone, yep, Kayvon Thibodeaux is definitely playing, but he's only going to be 70%, or he can only rush from this side of the line because he can only push off with this foot as his get off foot, or, whatever. It doesn't do them any good to put that out. So therefore, guess what? They don't put it out. And there's been enough conflicting information leaking that you wonder. The line has not really moved, which makes me think that no one is really sure right now. But if he's not 100%, Ohio State's tackles are good enough that Kayvon Thibodeaux at 100%, like I was fascinated to watch Nick Petit-Frere and DeJuan Jones try to deal with him, because that's going to tell you a lot about how those guys would hold up in the college football playoff. Now, if he has a big day, that probably tells you something. If he doesn't have a big day, I don't know that they could do anything that you wouldn't have people wondering, well, how banged up is he? If he doesn't have, if he's playing 30 snaps, 40 snaps, but he doesn't record any TFLs or any sacks, does that mean he was just really banged up and that's why? Or was he close enough to healthy that it really means something? And unfortunately, I don't think we're gonna really find that out, which is, kind of a bummer, because that was one of the one-on-one matchups I was maybe most interested in seeing.
Yeah, I did hear this week Mario Cristobal only scored a 6 on the Wonderlic. So that's a red flag for me right there.
Go Miami.
Yeah, just got to be careful there. Thibodeaux, we'll see. Here's a theory, Tom, before we go. If you don't play him and you lose, you have a built-in excuse for the committee. If you lose without him and run the table in the Pac-12, they can say, well, they didn't have their best player, and that would have made a difference, especially knowing how the committee always feels about Ohio State. Like, well, yeah, Ohio State, it's not like there's some juggernaut, but you would have beaten them with Kayvon Thibodeaux. So,
yeah, at that point, it basically becomes a quality loss for Ohio State to win the game. So, yeah, that's it's interesting. I don't think that anyone is actually going to be thinking it through that way, that maybe that's how it plays out, but I don't think that actually goes into the decision. I think if he's healthy enough, he's going to play. And I guess we'll just, I guess we'll find out which of the many different vaguely sourced internet rumors about his health are true. But yeah, I'm super interested to see Saturday morning at 10 a.m. when they come out of that tunnel. Is he warming up? Is he going through drills really, or is he kind of standing there with a helmet on and not doing it? Because that's we should know pretty early, I would think. And I'll be down on the field, and we'll make sure I tweet out some video of whatever he's doing, so you can see and judge for yourself.
I'm not so sure that we will know at all, because I hear Oregon is going with white jerseys and white numbers. So.
White jerseys, green numbers, green face masks. Their uniforms. There's a bunch of those Oregon uniforms that I kind of like. Yeah, these look pretty good. These are pretty sharp. I'm looking forward to the Oregon uniform experience in person, among 17,000 other things.
Yeah, very much so, including ye old crowd back in the shoe. So, Tom, you got anything else before we go?
I would assume in game prediction or game preview shows, we should probably share some sort of score predictions.
Correct.
That seems that seems like something that might be relevant to.
I did
interest.
submit mine. I did submit my staff picks to Mark. I went with, and I shouldn't even tell you this because you're just going to copy my score.
I already sent mine in.
Okay. I went 42-24 Ohio State.
This is going to be another season where we pick really, really close, scores that are very close together and don't really get a chance to really trash talk each other, which is
unfortunate.
The most disappointing kind of college football season, I would say. Yeah, I went 45-28 Ohio State. So, they're going to give up some points. Oregon's going to move the ball. There's going to be a big play at some point that Oregon's going to bust a big play. I don't think they can run the ball consistently enough to keep Ohio State off the field. I don't think you're going to be able to rely on Anthony Brown to move the chains through the air. If they're averaging 3-4 yards a carry on the ground, you're behind those, you're kind of behind schedule. And then you're relying on Anthony Brown, and he will pick up a couple first downs with his feet, but he's going to have to throw. And I think the Ohio State defense is going to be able to hold up, and they probably get enough pressure on him to, create some negative plays and put a lot of pressure on them. And then on offense, when I see someone stop this Ohio State team, I will go, okay, now I have seen it. Now I believe it. Not until then. This team just seems like it's just going to put up 40 something points every game, unless it puts up 50, unless it puts up 60. And until I see a defense do it, I'm not going to believe it. And based on, again, for the 1000th time this week, you do not want to overreact to week 1 results. But based on what we saw in week 1, I don't think this Oregon defense is going to be the one that does it.
Yeah, I agree. And I don't know that the offense will be up to the challenge either entirely, because it's really hard to keep up with Ohio State's offense. And when serve gets broken and you're like, well, now we have to score 14 points on the next possession somehow, and that's going to be really difficult. But we will see. I'm looking forward to it. Saturday at noon, Fox, big noon kickoff, everybody's favorite. I have not heard a single complaint about 12 p.m. kickoffs. It's kind of surprising to me. I thought people wouldn't like them, but it's universally loved. So looking forward to that. That will do it for today's show. I want to thank you guys for watching. Thank you for listening. As always, check out BuckeyeScoop.com. Become a member if you aren't. If you are, thank you very much for being a member, for being there, for talking on the message board, for just being part of the community and the experience. You can also find videos like this one at youtube.com/BuckeyeScoop. All kinds of stuff. Subscribe. You'll get notified whenever we drop something, which is quite frequently. So thank you guys, and we will talk to you later.